This is the patch 25.21 notes rundown. We've got nerfs to Diana, Kog'Maw, Morgana, Kiana, Quinn, buffs to Bard, Ezreal, Callista, Yone, Yunara. They're adjusting Mundo, Graves, and Gwen, and they're going to be making changes to Catalyst, Doran's Blade, Doran's Ring, Doran's Shield, and Second Wind. So this should be quite an interesting one here. Let's see. So Battle Pass stuff, blah, blah, blah. The ARAM Mayhem, we don't care. Practice tool updates. As Meddler mentioned in the dev update, we're making a few improvements to the practice tool this patch. Among other things, you can now use any champion in practice tool before purchasing them for PvP play. This is great. An icon will appear in the practice tool lobby to show you that all champions will be unlocked when you hop into practice tool as a single player. Give it a try and let us know what you think. I think this is great for new players being able to figure out what champion they're more likely to like, and for players to learn as they're starting the game what how champions work by hopping into practice tool and firing their abilities at a target dummy real quick. All champions are unlocked for players using practice tool in solo mode, one human player, so bots and spectators are okay. It's a little bit strange to me that you can't use all the champions when you're playing versus someone in practice tool. I think that doesn't really make sense that they would exclude that as a feature. Maybe they had problems with implementing it. So I don't know. That just seems a little bit weird. I don't know why they would want that to only be limited to single player practice tool, but okay, I guess. Added a feature to spawn and respawn neutral monster camps, jungle camps, and scuttle crab. That's good. That I can't believe that's missing. Fixed a bug where scuttle crab would not respawn in certain circumstances. Mac operating system to Metal and DirectX 11 changes. To maintain the stability and performance of our games, we sometimes need to depreciate support for older hardware and software or software that isn't widely used by players anymore. These kinds of changes typically only impact a small number of players, but we want to give a heads up in case you're impacted by these changes. At the beginning of the year, we updated our minimum spec requirements as we updated League to require DirectX 11. Feature level 11_0 for Windows users and Metal for Mac users. With 25.21, these will now be required, meaning that you'll need to have these graphic technologies in order to continue playing League. If you already meet the minimum requirements, you should be okay and won't notice the difference. However, if you don't find that the play button you'll find that the play button is grayed out and you'll receive a pop-up telling you that you need to update your hardware in order to play League again. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I have mixed feelings, right? On the one hand, I think it sucks to depreciate older hardware from being able to play. On the other hand, they talked about keeping up with performance requirements and stuff like that. One thing I wonder about that is, and maybe they're unrelated because I'm not super familiar with this stuff, but I believe that over the years, League has become less and less optimized, and so the amount of FPS drain for even with really good hardware that League has been taking is been bad. Like they're optimizing the game less and less, or maybe it's that they're adding a bunch of new skins that have all these complicated things going on with them. And new abilities that are much more complicated. Whatever the case may be, League over the years has become more FPS intensive even on really high quality equipment. I don't want to necessarily say on the same equipment because obviously that equipment's going to get worse over time, but I don't know. It just seems like a lot of companies do this where they take advantage of like the extra advancements made either in graphics or in even like storage space, for example. Not that League has a storage space problem, but games that like don't bother to optimize, so now every game is 60 or 70 gigabytes and takes up a huge amount of space, and so you fit the same number of games on your new 2 terabyte hard drive as you used to be able to fit on a much smaller hard drive. And it's because they're just abusing the fact that you have better equipment to not have to worry about optimizing as much. I feel like the same thing is happening with League's FPS in some way. And again, I don't understand the technicals, but I'm telling you that like even on high-end equipment, League is running at a lot lower FPS than it should in the past. And it must be just new stuff that they're adding, the skins, the The champions, the new abilities, even the way that the map is optimized, it's not optimized as much as it should be. Okay, Bard. We're pretty happy with Bard's current balance state, but would like to open up some more options for him, namely in building AP items like Shirelia's, making him better at supporting his team when playing a bit more AP heavy. Okay, W, Caretaker's Shrine, minimum heal 25 to 125 to 25 to 125, 30% AP ratio to 40% AP ratio, maximum heal 50 to 200 to 50 to 200, plus 60% AP ratio to plus 70% AP ratio. So he's getting 10% AP ratio buff to his W, and the movement speed is going from 20 to 30 to 20 to 30, plus 5% to plus 6% per 100 AP. So he's also getting 1% movement speed boost to his W as well per 100 AP. So not a huge deal, I don't think. I don't think Bard's W is actually that key of an ability either in terms of moving his strength one way or another as a champion. But yeah, that's an interesting change. But nothing too crazy there. Diana's last buff to her jungle clears overshot a bit, so we're walking it back a little bit to keep her more in line. Yeah, so they kind of brought Diana jungle back out of the grave, and they're reducing her monster damage from 300% to 280%. That's a very small decrease. Usually when you see these kinds of changes, they're probably getting better at fine-tuning these now, especially with the champion like Diana, that they've gone back and forth with her passive monster damage many times. But as I always say with these jungle changes, you kind of just have to see how it affects the clear speed, and I'm not going to know off the top of my head, especially not being a jungler, but I will say 20% does not sound like a whole lot. So like they said, this is a very slight change, and she'll probably still be totally fine in the jungle. But I would imagine that this is not like killer for her or anything like that, but should slow her down a little bit, but not much. Dr. Mundo, armor growth 3.7 to 4.5, so they're buffing his armor growth, and then his E blunt force trauma 5 to 45 to 5 to 45, plus 7% of bonus HP down to plus 5% of bonus HP. Let's see what they said, because I think this is a pretty power neutral change and not really that big of a deal. So let's see. Dr. Mundo is a scaling juggernaut who has to wade through a fairly weak early game in order to scale into the ability to go wherever he pleases. We're happy he's able to go where he pleases, but he's bursting whoever he pleases a bit too easily. We're looking for some power neutral adjustments that take away some late game burst and give back late game durability instead, or in its stead. Yeah. Okay, so we agree. It's just a power neutral change. They felt like he was doing a little bit too much damage. They're making him a little bit tankier to compensate. I think that that's totally fine. A little bit surprised that they outright went with a neutral change. I'm not super familiar with how Mundo's doing right now in terms of win rate. We could look that up real quick. But I would say Mundo has been doing really well and gained a lot more popularity. So I would wonder if... so he's 51% Emerald Plus, the 5th most picked top laner, and I would almost expect him to do better the lower we go, because he's fairly simple and easy champion to play. Apparently not. 49.9%. I get how they could feel this way then, maybe. What about a little bit higher up? He's probably always doing really well. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's see. This is probably on the new version, though, so let's go to the last patch. 49% Master Plus. And Mundo was sitting at... I just felt like they could have just directly nerfed him by taking the damage away from his E. Am I wrong there? Off the top of my head here. So he's pretty neutral in Emerald Plus last patch. So before this nerf. Yeah, I don't know. Either way, not a huge change. Maybe they could have just hit the E damage and not given him the armor growth, and that would have been fine. Just kind of depends a little bit on what you think about this one. It's pretty close to either way. I think if Mundo's sitting at 52%, third most picked top laner in gold plus, then you probably could have just directly hit him and not compensated with the armor change. Ezreal attack damage growth 2.75 to 3.25. Ezreal's been a low performer lately, especially at lower ranks. We're looking to add a little bit of general power to help him keep up as games go late. Think that that's great. Totally fine change. Nothing major. Graves, magic resist 32 to 30. Magic resist growth 2.05 down to 1.3. Wow, this is awful. What? Quick draw. Okay, here we go. Now grants 50% of armor as bonus magic resistance. Magic resistance per stack 2 to 8, and max magic resistance 16 to 64. Okay. We'd like to nudge Graves back towards having a strong, sustained fight pattern, and that means letting him rely on grit and playing to stack it up. As he's getting this MR from Quick Draw, he can once again have the base magic resistance of a ranged champion. So if you catch Graves before he's able to stack up, he's more burstable than before, but if he's able to play the fight out the way he wants, he'll grow to be the sustained monster we all know and love. I think that this is a good change, actually. I think that this allows for a lot more skill expression from Graves players, and it gives him a little bit of power back while maintaining a clear weakness as well. So I was going to say, when I was first reading, obviously, the magic resist and magic resist growth changes, like, Graves is not in a good spot right now and could use a little bit of love. So I'm surprised that they would hit him like that. But obviously, it's just compensated for with the E changes in most situations where you can play the champion properly. So I think that this is good. Probably a buff to Graves. Kind of hard to tell, though, because on the other hand, I do wonder, and maybe it's just the way Graves players are playing now, but it does seem like Graves' play pattern is just to, like, dash in, bounce a Q off of a wall, and, like, auto you, like, one time. Maybe he throws his W down and autos you a second time, and then he ults or something like that. So maybe that's just the way people are playing Graves now, but it doesn't seem like his play style or pattern allows for him to be dashing like 5 times or something like that. So I guess I'm wondering, is that realistically going to be happening, or do people not play that way anymore on Graves, or is it not viable for him to be played that way anymore? And if it's not, then that's kind of an issue. Gwen, health 600 to 625. Health growth 100 to 125, and attack speed growth 2.5% to 2.25%. So they're buffing her health and her health growth, but they're reducing her attack speed growth a little bit. Passive 1,000 cuts. Oh my God, there's a lot of changes. AP ratio 0.55% per 100 AP to 0.6% per 100 AP. So that's a buff to her passive AP ratio. Q snip damage 10 to 30 to 10 to 30 plus, and then it was plus 2% AP to plus 5% AP. So she's getting a 3% AP ratio buff to, I believe there's each round of her Q. So that's going to stack up to be a lot more. This is really bad. Like, I can't believe this, actually. So in my opinion, Gwen was already in a really good spot and pretty strong. She's maybe not a ton of people playing her, but she was really, really strong. This is like completely busted. Like, you'd happily get more tankiness and be impossible to kill for a little bit of less attack speed. And then you're doing significantly more damage on your passive and Q, which is also your main damage source, like significant portion of her damage. Really big deal. What makes the champion good? Very concerning. W Hollowed Mist. Armor and magic resist 22 to 22 to 30, and the 7% AP ratio is staying the same. And the cooldown is going from 24 to 18 to 22 to 18. So her W is giving her more resistances as well, which is going to make her even more tanky, and the cooldown's going down. Her E, skip and slash, damage is going from 8 to 20 to 15 flat, which is going to be a lot better earlier on. And I'm assuming, obviously, you're probably maxing Q first and then E second, or maybe even third, probably second. So this is going to be a buff for a lot of the game. And then 25% AP down to 20% AP. So you actually do lose a little bit of damage later on her E, but not a big deal. And then 12 to 8 second cooldown to 13 to 11 second cooldown. So she may be a little bit less mobile. Cooldown refund 50% to 25% to 65%. So that's an interesting change. So also the cooldown will get a little bit longer there early, but then a little bit shorter later. Our needlework damage 30 to 90 to 35 to 95, 8% AP to 10% AP. And again, there's multiple needles, so that's going to get even more damage. Slow 30% to 60% to 40% to 60%. This is one of the worst changes I've seen recently. This is terrible. Gwen is going to be completely broken. Okay, so why have they done this? Where is Gwen? So we're looking at the previous patch here. In top lane, Gwen, what rank are we looking at? So in Gold Plus, I would expect it to be a little bit lower because she's, well, she's not that difficult to play, but I wouldn't expect Gold players to know how to play Gwen. So 47.85% win rate, a little bit low to be fair. But then when we swing up to like Emerald Plus, a champion like Gwen is sitting at a 48%, so 48.2%, a little bit higher. And let's keep going higher here, but we go up and up and up, and I would assume she's getting better and better. So even Diamond Plus, she's already above 50% win rate before these buffs. In Masters, actually a little bit lower in Masters. That's interesting. But, not a huge sample size in Masters, especially on a champion not being played so much. We have the hindsight bias of actually being able to look at the current patch now, because, of course, Gwen is, or the patch has happened, and I'm a little bit late to this one. Gwen's sitting at 52% win rate in Masters Plus, 52% win rate more or less in Diamond Plus, 52% win rate in Emerald Plus. Yeah, they made the champion broken. Why would they do this? What about in Gold? Did they fix her in Gold? Still up 43 positions to 51.36%. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. This was just a really boneheaded change. The champion was fine. It wasn't very popular, but the champion just had a very clear, strong set of abilities that were winning a lot. I don't know why they would do such significant buffs to a champion that was barely sitting below 50%. Is there a Gwen skin coming out or something like that this patch? I don't know. This just didn't make any sense to me. This is just really crazy. And sure, you want to buff the champion, you buff the champion, but did they need to buff every single one of her abilities and her base stats? No. So that's just crazy. They did pull back in certain directions, like on her E, on her attack speed growth and things like that, but this is just ridiculous. Callista attack speed or attack damage growth, 4.25 to 4.75. So yeah, they really hit Callista, I think because of competitive a little while back. So they're giving her a little bit of attack damage growth back, but this isn't going to compensate. But it should help her a little bit, so that's fine. Kog'Maw Q, 10 to 30% passive attack speed to 5 to 25%. Kog'Maw is one of the winningest bot laners in the game and has lost his identity as a scaler. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I always found it weird because I thought Kog'Maw's been really good for a while, but nobody plays it, especially in competitive. But in solo queue too, nobody plays it very much. And it's very surprising to me because I have been thinking he's been really good for a while, but seems appropriate, I guess. It's just weird because he was very good and never found the spotlight. Morgana armor growth 5 to 4.2. She has taken off as a powerful mid laner across all ranks of play. We're super happy that she's found a new audience here, but she's also meaningfully overpowered. So we're bringing down her guaranteed durability. That's fine. Kiana has been one of the clear winners from the recent changes to Profane, Hydra, and Axiom Arc. I have to call Riot out on this one. So let me pull up the Qiyana wiki real quick. Sure, she's benefited from the Profane Hydra thing, but I'm pretty sure that they buffed Qiyana when they shouldn't have. It was one of the changes that I was really annoyed about. Yeah, see, 2 patches ago, or 3 patches ago, they took her base attack damage. Oh, they nerfed it. Hold on. Well, where was this? Where was they buffed her? Maybe it was a long time ago, and that's why I'm not remembering. So they took her base damage and they increased it by 10 on this, and then her bonus attack speed went from 15 to 35, 5 to 25. That's kind of a nerf. That's not really a big buff. This is a nerf. This was a nerf. That's the one we're reading now. When did they do the buff to her? I mean, there's some minor stuff here. Maybe I'm wrong. I remember. I mean, there are some buffs here, but she's been changed a lot, so we'd have to really go back and look at this. I believe that it's true that she's benefiting from the Profane Hydra stuff. I think that they buffed Qiyana and she was way too strong, and then they had to keep nerfing her, if I remember correctly. So I don't know about that. They directly buffed this champion this year multiple times and then had to walk it back multiple times. So I don't know. I always hate when Riot in the paragraph here like somehow dodges accountability for some reason by blaming it on something else, even though it's like you go and you look and it's like, didn't they just buff this champion? And now they're walking it back. And instead of saying that we overbuffed the champion, sometimes they say, like with the Diana change, they say, look, we overbuffed the champion's bonus damage to monsters. She's really strong again. We're walking it back. Fine, right? Like, you're not going to get the numbers perfect every time. But when they say, like, oh, Qiyana's too strong because of some unrelated thing that's been happening with an item, and then it's actually just because they directly buffed Qiyana a couple of patches ago, feels really disingenuous to me. But health growth, 124 down to 121. Not a huge deal, but, you know, it matters. Q Elemental Wrath / Edge of Ixtal. Damage 70 to 190 to 70 to 190. 90% bonus AD down to 85% bonus AD. Not very big nerfs, right? Her Q is missing 5% bonus AD, and her health is missing 3 per level. Not a very big nerf, but you know, depending on how she's doing, probably enough to move her down a little bit. And it looks like they nerfed her on the last patch or something as well, so maybe it's fine. Quinn. Damage 65 on her Q, 65 to 205 to 65 to 205. 80% bonus AD to 120% bonus AD to 80 to 100% bonus AD. So it's going to be the same early, but then it's going to fall off and do less based off of her bonus AD. And then her R is going from 70% of total AD to 60 to 120 flat, plus 35% of bonus AD. Again, that's kind of a complicated break-even point. Let's say that you had roughly, you know, like by level 6, let's say before you had 100 AD, you know, you would have been doing 70 if you had 100 total AD. Now you'd be doing 60 plus 35% of your bonus AD. If your base AD was like 70 and you had like 30 that you had bought, then you'd be getting 35% of 30, which is like 10.5. So that would also be about 70. So that seems like it's about the same. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's about the same on her ult, at least in my hypothetical I came up with. So if those are roughly the numbers, it seems like her ult damage is about the same, at least there. Maybe it changes at rank 2 or rank 3, but about the same. Then I don't know how much AD Quinn is going to have at that point, though. And then this is down a little bit later, but about the same early. Quinn has become one of the winningest top laners for a while now, With us nerfing both Doran Shield and Second Wind this patch, we're confident that Quinn... Okay, there we go. So they're nerfing Quinn because they're going to nerf Doran Shield and Second Wind, which we're going to get into. So I'm kind of interested in those changes more than anything else this patch. And obviously Quinn's just going to benefit from that a lot. So they're preemptively nerfing her a little bit. I don't know that this is going to be helping with that, though, because this is just nerfing her Q damage later, and I don't see that it's doing much to her ult. So for those reasons, how is this going to change, like, somebody getting poked? I don't... Let me see here again. 65 to 205. 65 to 205. Yeah, this is not going to help somebody getting poked in lane by Quinn. So this is a weird approach to take, to nerf her Q damage later. That's not what Second Wind and Bone Plating were, or Second Wind and Doran Shield were helping with. So that's just weird. Yone, 60 to 62 attack damage, totally fine. They say he's performing a little bit bad. They want to give him a tiny... Well, it's not actually that tiny. We saw what the 2 AD on Caitlyn did. But yeah, this is a fine buff to a champion that maybe needs a little bit. Oh my god. Okay, we got a lot of changes on Yunara, and then we finally get into the items here. Okay, Yunara W. Arc of Judgment, 5 to 105 to 55 to 215. Wow, that's all. Okay, so the initial damage is going way, way up. But then the ratio is changing. So it's changing from total AD to bonus AD. So obviously that's going to change things again. These are always such confusing changes to calculate. So again, let's say you have 100 AD, 85% would have been an extra 85 damage. So at 100 AD, you would have been doing 90 damage initially with your W. But here, you're doing nowhere near that, because if you have a base of like 60 or 70, you're getting 85% of... Oh, maybe it actually balances out. Of like 30 would be like 25 damage, plus 55 is 80.5. Yeah, it's actually about the same as the Quinn thing. It's actually about the same. And I wonder how it affects scaling later on. And then damage per second is going from 5 to 65 to 33 to 129. But again, it's changing from total AD to bonus AD. But it's I could calculate it again here, but it feels pretty power neutral at like 100 AD. Okay, so let's say if we have 100, so we have like 70 of that as base. Base is a little bit lower than that, to be fair. But anyways, we have like, roughly 30 bonus AD. 51% of that is going to be like 15.3, plus the base of 33 damage is 48. Whereas before, if we had 100 AD, we were doing 45. So it's very, very similar. I don't even think that... we could calculate one of these later amounts, but I wouldn't know exactly how much AD the champions are going to have then. But I don't even think on these later amounts it's going to be that different. I don't see why it would change as this scales here. You have more bonus AD compared to base AD the later you go on into the game. But we're not comparing base to bonus, we're comparing total to bonus. And so as long as the ratio between total and AD and bonus are the same, I don't know that it changes really. W Arc of Ruin. Damage 50 to 350 to 175 to 525. But again, we're doing this weird change where we're going to bonus AD instead of total AD. I'm not going to keep doing the math on this. It is what it is. I'm going to read the blurb because this is such a big change and I'm wondering why everything is changing to bonus AD. Movement speed 30 to 50% to 30 to 50%. Decaying over 1.5 seconds to decaying over 1.5 seconds. Why did they write anything here then? Very confusing. Movement speed towards enemies 45 to 75% to 45 to 75%, decaying over 1 second to decaying after 1.5 seconds. Oh, so this is a buff because rather than decaying over its duration. It's going to start decaying after the whole duration. Okay, that's why they wrote this in. So this is a buff to her movement speed and her movement speed towards enemies. Pretty significant buff. The cooldown is going up by 1.5 seconds, but I don't think that that's a huge deal because you're obviously not spamming this off of cooldown. You're playing around this, and the movement speed buff is really nice. Step right, fixed a bug where Yunara could retain the enhanced movement speed without facing any enemy champions. That's fine. This seems like a buff to Yunara, but wasn't Yunara already very good? We're here to buff Yunara today as she's still relatively new. Over 2/3 of her games are played by inexperienced players, substantially dragging down her win rate. But even after accounting for that fact, she's still weaker than the average bot laner. We want to achieve 2 goals here. First, we want to improve the value of ability ranks in W so that players who invest in spell damage are rewarded for their skill points. Second, we want to make her more consistently mobile, bringing up her E movement speed so that players don't have to hold it just to juke a key skill shot and instead can take more proactive and aggressive fights. I don't know about that. The change here to our ultimate is a very slight nerf that aligns both W abilities to use bonus attack damage while keeping her total appetite for longswords about the same. They didn't really explain how changing everything to bonus attack damage versus total attack damage changes much. It says it's going to keep it the same. So, I don't know. Just for funsies, I guess. Yeah, seems like a buff to Yunara. Seems like they wanted to buff Yunara. I'm a little bit surprised that they wanted to buff Yunara. I think that Yunara's been fine. Let's go to our standard Emerald Plus here on Yunara. This is on the current patch, actually. She's still at a 47% win rate on the current patch, so maybe she was doing terrible. I thought Yunara was doing great. Maybe I'm a little bit out of touch on what happened with Yunara. I mean, we've been doing all the patch note videos. Did they nerf Yunara previously? Like, Yunara was on a really good path when she got released. She was on a really good path to very, very high win rate when she got released. She must have been nerfed. Yeah, there's been a lot of changes. I guess, so this is when she was added. Bug fixes. Yeah, base health reduced, attack damage reduced, bonus movement speed reduced, duration reduced. Yeah, so basically she was on a path to a pretty high win rate, and then she got significantly nerfed. And now she's been nerfed too hard. So she did need these buffs, absolutely. In fact, I don't even think these buffs go far enough, knowing how in the gutter she was. So she's been, obviously people are starting to get better at the champion, have more time to play it, and the champion's stuck at a 46 or a 47% win rate. So she may even need more than this, because a lot of these changes were really neutral. Like the total AD to bonus AD was not buffing her all that much, so... items, Catalyst, health 350 to 300. Okay, thank God. This item's really busted. Catalyst needs to be competitive with Lost Chapter in giving tankier AP champions enough mana to play out their laning phases. It does not, however, need to invalidate burst damage so strongly. We're delivering a small health nerf until it's turned into Rod of Ages. They could even go harder with this, as crazy as that sounds. Double Ruby Crystal into Catalyst just is too broken. Doran's Blade... 3% lifesteal removed. New, heal for 2.5% of damage dealt. Reduced to 33% of this value for area of effect spells and pet spells. So they're changing it to Omnivamp. We're moving Doran's Blade back to its 14.1 version with Omnivamp because the item is meant to serve more than just attackers, really? But instead a wide range of AD champions, such as those who rely on abilities to deal their damage. That's kind of cool. I wonder how that's going to change who is starting it. I kind of like it. I guess it makes Doran's Blade a lot more viable starting item for top laners again, for example. I really think that that's nice. So I kind of like that. Doran's Ring. Mana regen 1.25 per second to 1 per second, but it's increased to 2 per second for 5 seconds after damaging an enemy champion. I think that that's good too. So that's, not a huge change, but it's going to encourage people to interact with the enemy laner more interactive gameplay. And health regen is going from 0.55 per second to 45% of mana regenerated value, whatever that means. I assume that means 45% of the mana that you're regenerating through Doran's Ring. The current tuning of some starter items and Second Wind can make it feel pointless to attempt to harass during laning phase, resulting in stale gameplay, especially in mid lane where players don't play for kills often enough. Completely agree. With these changes, we're attempting to nudge back towards poke being more valuable in the laning phase. I hope that this actually accomplishes that, because I think that this lack of interactive gameplay has gotten too far, and I'm glad to see they're taking some steps to approach it. Doran Shield is another one that they're hitting, which is on the other end of that, going to help with that. See, Doran's Ring, max health or max healing after taking damage, 45 melee, 30 ranged, 40 melee, 30 ranged. Maybe I'm missing something, but are there not ranged champions that build Doran Shield and abuse that in mid lane and top lane? Again, those are the lanes I'm least familiar with as a as a support player myself, but it's a little bit strange to me that they didn't hit it at all for ranged. And it's going from max healing from 45 to 40. Let me look up Doran Shield really quickly as an item as well. Because if it's the maximum healing, are a lot of cases you're just not even getting the maximum healing, so it doesn't even matter? After taking damage from a champion, gain bonus health regeneration per second equal to 0 to 5 if you're melee, based on current missing health for 8 seconds, refreshing on subsequent hits. Oh, so this is just per second instead of per 5 seconds. So yeah, it's going from 0 to 45 to 0 to 40. And this is at maximum when you're missing 75% of your HP. So this does trickle down and reduce, how much healing you'd be getting at 67% and at 60% and stuff like that. Okay, this is fine. So yeah, this does have obviously an impact. Not a huge impact though, to be honest, but I think that this seems rather light considering how good Doran Shield is, but obviously you don't want to nerf it to oblivion where it's never an option. And also Doran Shield is kind of a necessary part of the game to combat certain champions and prevent them from being broken. So on the other flip side of this, like they were talking about with champions like Quinn, if they really gut Doran Shield in Second Wind, what is going to happen to to other aspects of the game? Okay, Rune's Second Wind, healing after taking damage, 3 plus 4% of missing health to just 4% of missing health. That's a really, really big deal. It doesn't sound like a ton, but it actually ends up adding up to a lot of healing that you're going to miss from Second Wind. And there were a lot of situations where you get hit for very minimal damage and end up proccing Second Wind and getting some healing back, and it almost feels like it's healing you when they hit you. That is gone, and that feels really bad. So let's say, for example, that I am Braum, and I am missing, because I use this on Braum all the time. So let's say that I'm, taking an auto attack, and I take a measly 20 damage from that auto attack or something like that. If I have 1,000 HP, and I'm missing a lot of it, 750. So I have 250 HP left. So I'm missing 750 HP. 4% of 750 is 30. And I also get 3 flat. So if I'm, if I have 1,000 HP on Braum and I'm at 250 and somebody hits me, Second Wind heals me for 33. So in a lot of cases, especially early game, and 1000 HP is not that much, you can have that pretty early on a champion like Braum. In a lot of cases, they're going to auto me for like 40 or 50 damage. So I'm barely taking anything at that point. If I can, wait the heal duration, I'm barely taking anything from that auto attack, barely anything. There are even situations where you block that auto attack, right? Like I mitigate the damage the auto attack would deal with my W, or I don't take the damage from it at all with my E. Or a guardian goes off and I maybe take a tiny little bit of extra damage. There's a lot of things where for a champion like Braum, you technically take a little bit of damage and proc second wind, but you're mitigating most of the damage. And on those situations, I'm actually healing from their auto attack because their auto attack's doing 40. I'm healing 33, but I didn't take the full damage from the auto attack either. So, with a shield or something like that, I'm actually taking like 30 damage. I'm healing for 33. It feels like I'm healing even though they're hitting me instead of doing something else. So, yeah, taking that 3 away means that less of that can happen. I don't know. That feels pretty bad for second wind. And I want to swing over because I noticed this trend with Braum actually. So we're a little bit late on the patch. So if we look at this current patch now, and you go to runes for a champion like Braum, second wind is no longer being picked most of the time on Braum. People are back to picking things like bone plating. People are even starting to question how good, conditioning is. It's obviously got a very low pick rate, but a slightly higher win rate than second wind and bone plating right now. So maybe conditioning needs to be tried more. So this is really going to shake these things up. And to a certain extent, it's healthy because second wind should be a situational option that you take when you're versus a heavy poke lane, not something I take 90% of games and take bone plating 10% when I'm against a very clearly engage oriented no poke champion. Brawl game mode extension. And then there's some skins. What is this? New Nexus finisher, bug fixes. They also announced, by the way, that there's going to be a really nice winter map for Christmas and for winter this year, which is going to be fun. 3 skins this patch. I like to hate on the economics of Riot releasing 3 skins a patch. I think that they should try to make a little bit more money and release some more skins. 3 really unique and great skins, though. I think Biko is incredible, so... it is what it is. You can only hit so many times, right? So, yep, that's the patch. With that being said, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day, as always.